Welcome to Chicago Dreis Krump, part 2 of the HPB Hydraulic Press Brake Machine setup and overview. At this point, you should have your dies aligned in your press and make sure you've got plenty of clearance on your fingers to the top of your V-die. We're going to do a quick startup procedure on our press brake. It's the main power on. Come around to the front panel here, and you've got a status light currently on. You've got a key, turns power on to the rest of the machine. The control is turned on with this switch on the side. Takes a couple seconds for it to boot up. Press any key on the control here. Brings you to what they call a ready screen. Once you're at the ready screen, you can go ahead and jog the machine. You can home the machine, either the X, the Y, or home the X and Y at the same time. You can edit a program. Currently program number 0 is in here right now. So we can go through and edit the X-axis, which is your back gauge. Y is your ram travel. So you'll notice that all 4 of these bends have the same Y travel. So this would indicate that they're all the same bend. If you want to vary your bend angle, you'll obviously bend either less or more on your Y travel from whatever you've determined on your setup. And of course your flange length is going to vary as well. So we're going to go through and just show you how to edit a program and or start from a brand new program. Okay, I want to go over the front control panel here. So these have your status lights. It shows the main power, the motor start, and your start button is down here. Your status light will light up. You can also stop the motor here. You can also make the ram go up and down from here. So either from here or the pedal. And again, you want to be in the single mode the inch mode instead of the single mode. Single mode is used for your auto program run. Inch mode is for setup. This is your timer for the dwell at the bottom of stroke. The higher you turn it to the clockwise position, the longer the dwell. This is your resettable counter. On the right hand side of the machine here, you'll have your main pressure gauge. You do this by opening it. And then when the machine is under a load, you turn this clockwise to increase the pressure, or counterclockwise to decrease the pressure. When you're not using this gauge, go ahead and shut it off at the valve here. So this is part of your setup. This first switch here is a slow down switch. So just to kind of show you how that works. Okay, just to go over your switching on the side of the machine here. The ones you want to focus on are the slow down switch. This switch you want to see activated just prior to the die touching the top of the material when it's laying flat. And that'll speed up your cycle. And if I can demonstrate right now, when the machine comes down, you'll notice it comes down at a rate and then it slows down. Okay, so that's where you want it to slow down, just before it touches the top of the material, when the material's in there, top of the V-block. Then it cycles through at a certain rate, dwells, that's your dwell timer, and then it will return when it's in the auto mode. Right now we're in the inch mode, so we're strictly doing everything manually. Here are your back gauge stops. So these can be adjusted. There's a 1/2 inch of travel in either direction, both back and forward. So you can either offset the backstops, or you could just use it as calibration, and then you lock it down. Okay, I wanted to do a quick video on how to home both the Y and the X axis. So from the main screen, we're going to go to the home screen. And if we want to do both axes at the same time, we're going to press the XY. If you only wanted to do the X axis, which is the back gauge, you would only press X. If you wanted to do Y, you would only press Y. Y should be already set, so we're going to go ahead and just adjust the back gauge. So first thing we're going to do is home the back gauge. We're going to press X. It's highlighted currently. We're going to press cycle start. When we press cycle start, the back gauge will run back to the farthest extreme and hit the homing switch. Once it finds home, which happens to be 21.537, we'll go ahead and advance the back gauge to the front of the die, and we will calibrate it. Okay, so we're going to run the back gauge forward and see if it's calibrated. We're going to hit return, go into the jog mode. We've got 3 different speeds here. We've got high, medium, and low for setup purposes for running the X and the Y axes. Be very careful with the back gauge. I would not run it on high. It's extremely fast. So I would prefer to use the medium and low speed setting. When you want to get to an exact setting, we'll cover this continuation where we can set it at incremental movements. You want to get very precise. So for now, we're going to leave it on continue. And here are your back gauge movements. So we're going to bring the back gauge forward. And again, you want to make sure that your back gauge is clearing your die. I'm going to slip it down to the low speed setting. You want to make sure your back gauge is clear of the top of your die at this point. If not, you go in the back and raise it up. So now at this point, I'm going to line the back gauge up with the edge of the die. All right, and there it is. So it's currently sitting at 3/4 of an inch, which is the distance from the tip of the die. I'm sorry, the center line of the die to the tip of the back gauge bars. So we can measure that, and we can change it as needed. So going back to the screen, you can see we're currently sitting at 0.753. If we wanted to change that, we would go into the next screen and we would correct. So let's just say, for instance, we wanted to correct the X and make it 1.5 inches. Perhaps it was out that much. So we would enter the new value, hit return. That plugs the new value in here, and then press X axis twice. That sets your new value. So you're basically telling the control where the back gauge is. So you may have to change this depending on where your die location is, but there is over an inch of adjustment in the back gauge bars. So they should be in the center when you receive the machine. You've got at least a 1/2 inch travel forward to back. So now let's go ahead and set the back gauge back to 3/4 of an inch. So again, to do this, we're going to go X. We're going to enter a new value, 0.7500 here. Hit your return. That plugs the new value in, puts it here temporarily, and then after you've pressed X twice, puts it in the control. So currently your back gauge is now set for 3/4 of an inch. And again, that's from the center line of the die to the tip of the back gauge. Okay, we're going to do a real quick demo on just trying to achieve a 90-degree angle bend. So we've got some 16 gauge material, and I'm just going to use a ruler here, and we're going to measure from the tip of the die down to the bottom of the V. I know it's about 4 inches. You, of course, would probably use a precision scale, but it's about 4 inches. And so it's 4 inches less the gauge of the material, and that would achieve a 90-degree angle bend. So on our control, we're going to want to see somewhere around 3 7/8 of travel to achieve a 90-degree angle bend. So that's where we'll start, and then we'll adjust it accordingly. Okay, so we're back on the control now. We're going to want to set our y-axis somewhere around 3.75. So with my high speed set for the y-axis, I'm going to go ahead and go in the positive direction, and we're going to run it up to 3.875. So you'll notice that the ram itself is not moving. There's an internal nut moving, and that's where we're going to get our adjustment. So back on the screen here, we're going to be 3.875. We're going to start, if you want to get an exact number, you're going to go away from high, you're going to go into continuous, and we can get it right down to the tenths. We want to make it exact, and you can see we can get it 3.875 exactly. Okay, so we're going to bring it down on our test piece and see if we get a 90-degree angle bend. Okay, so I got our piece that just fell out, and going up against the 90-degree angle square, I can see we're pretty close. So that is going to be our dimension on the y-axis to achieve a 90-degree angle bend. Now if we wanted more of a bend, we would go down further, because it's an 88-degree die that I'm currently using. If I wanted to go less, I would go down less, like 3.8 or 3.850. It'd just be a question of experimenting with the depth and checking the angle. So we're going to go ahead and try to adjust our y-axis to back to continuous, high. You can go high, medium, low. We're going to go high on the y-axis. We're going to go ahead and adjust it so we have less travel. And we're going to just say we're going to try to get a 86-degree bend. So you know, we'll start around 3.8, and we can always bump our way up. So we'll go ahead and try it at this setting on our y-axis, and we'll test another piece, see what kind of angle we get. Okay, so we're doing our test setup. We've got our y-axis now set at a lesser travel, 3.808. Let's see what we can achieve here. So we'll travel less, and we'll measure the angle when we're done with testing. So here you can see our original angle of 90 degrees was achieved with 3.875 with this die set and this gauge. And the back angle, you can see, is there's about an 8-degree difference. And that was achieved with a 3.808 y-axis depth. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create a program. So this is assuming you've already tested your dies out and you know what is required to get a 90-degree angle bend, and you know what your flange lengths are going to be for your backstop. So once you've decided you've got those numbers, we're going to go ahead and just go into the edit mode, and we're going to hit the program S button. This will allow us to pick up to 1 through 99 programs. Some of these are empty. It'll say that it's empty. So we're going to go ahead and pick this program 1. We're going to hit enter. This will temporarily put the program in the memory. Then we're going to go ahead and return and say edit. Okay, now that we're in the edit screen, we can add several lines as needed. And we know we're in program 1 because it'll put it up here in the top right hand corner. So currently this is your number 1 line that we're working on. Let's just say our back gauge is going to be 1.25. We'll just simply enter that value, puts it here temporarily, hit enter. And now it's asking for the Y. So we had determined earlier that a 90-degree angle on this on this particular die setup is 3.870. So we're going to go ahead and enter that. These values here are in the book if you want to go in and play with these, but we're not going to go through that right now. We're going to add a second line. So we're going to turn our part around and we're going to bend another flange. It's going to be, say, 1 7/8. Hit enter. Takes you right to the next Y value. Now we want a 90-degree angle bend on this side as well. Okay, and as you go down, you'll notice it just keeps adding lines. So we can either run it as is, or say we want to add a third bend. We can make this one 1 inch, and maybe we want to make an 85-degree bend on this, so we would have a slightly less Y travel. And if you determine your testing that you want to go 3.820, maybe that gets you an 88-degree angle. We're ready to run our program. Okay, so now that we've got our 3-line program, we're going to go ahead and run it. So to do this, we're going to start the motor. And now that we're going to run it in the auto mode, we also want to make sure we put it in the single position. So you put your material in there. And the first bend, it's going to go ahead and put the back gauge at 1.25. It'll set the nut to 3.870. So when we hit cycle start, back gauge moves, and the internal nut goes to the preset Y-axis. At which point, you'll go ahead and hit your pedal down. It's hitting the slow speed, switch, bottoms, and returns. Return your material. Back gauge advances, and the internal nuts move to 3.82. Do this last bend. And that cycle is done. If you want to keep going, we just keep loading the material. Okay, now we're going to run another program that is very similar to the last one. It's called 0. So once we hit enter, it loads it into the memory. Now it's just a question of returning. Going into the edit mode, and here's your program. This particular one has 4 lines of information. You'll notice the Y-axis is all the same. It's a 90-degree angle bend on all these. And you see the backstop has got 4 different values. So we're going to go ahead and just run it from this position with the pedal. Control panel is okay. So once we have the program the way we want it, we're going to go ahead and hit return and go into the auto mode. Okay, so there's your program again. You know you're in the auto mode because it's highlighted. And the cursor is in the top left-hand corner. That's where you're going to start. After you insert your metal, you're going to hit cycle start. Back gauge will go to 1.6089, and the Y-axis nut will go to 3.7787, which is what you see here and here. So go ahead and just start hitting your pedal down. Notice the back gauge will advance on the return. Okay. Turn your material. Die comes down again. The second bend. Here's your dwell time. Back gauge advances. Bend 3. That's our last bend. The back gauge is at 6 inches. Now the die is slowing down way before it should, so I'm going to go ahead and speed that up. Okay, what I mean by that is when the top die comes down, right there it's hitting the slow switch, which is way too soon. So here's your slow switch right here. We're going to loosen it, and we're going to draw it down with this thumb screw. And you want it to hit that slow down switch about a 1/4 inch before it actually contacts the flat material. That'll speed up your cycle. Give that a shot. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about deleting programs, and I'm doing a little maintenance here. So if we go into edit mode and program S, this will list your programs. So currently I know I have a program in 1. So if you want to look at it, you can just hit enter and return. And you can see the program, look at it, and if you determine you don't want it, you go back to edit program. So from here you can highlight the program you don't want, program number 1, and then just hit this option right here, delete. It asks you, do you want to delete it? Say yes. Okay, and that program is no longer. So just a little maintenance here. So the only program I've left in this one right now is the 00 program.